So I finally played Live Alive. It's pretty good. Live Alive 2022 for the Switch is a remake of the original from 1994 which released for the Super Famicom, and sees you play through different eras in time with an array of protagonists. Now instead of doing a review, I felt it would be way more cool to do a ranking of the eras instead from worst to best. And with that I will give you the obligatory spoiler warning. I'll be going over mechanics, characters and story in the commentary, so if you don't want to see or hear that, stop watching. Starting us off is the prehistory era with our resident caveman Pogo as the main protag. It's a land of few luxuries and only has the most basic of technology as you would expect of the early days of man. This was the first era I played through and it was a precursor for the neat design elements within the game. Though the basic mechanics remain the same between segments, each one also has their own unique systems that separate them from their contemporaries, effectively giving a bit of spice to each story, and the prehistory era is no different. A good example of this is that Pogo can sniff out goodies on the overmap like healing items and enemies to grind out. However, it also has another addition that in terms of immersion works well, but in terms of a JRPG, doesn't. The prehistory era is the only segment that has near on zero dialogue and everything is communicated to the player via the actions of the characters. The issue with that is that there's only so much that a 2.5D style can illustrate, and despite the clear simplicity of the story here, I still struggled at times to figure out what was going on. I appreciate why it's there, but it just doesn't work for me. Other than that, this part of the game doesn't really have anything that stands out. Music is fine, gameplay is okay, it's just a forgettable chapter overall. Next up on the list is the near future era with the delinquent Akira. Now while the prehistory era had a simple story effectively forced upon it due to its unique aspects, I felt that the near future chapter had the opposite problem in that it had a story that was trying to do too much. Akira has the ability of reading the minds of those around him, which in a bubble is a decent mechanic. But that alone isn't sufficient. You've got themes which should be heavy hitting but just don't have impact because there's little to no build up. I also felt that the near future chapter suffered from a real lack of direction at times. One part that stands out to me is when you have to sit on the bog waiting for a little kid to give you stuff, and you have to do it like 4 times in a row with no indication as such. For me as well, I wasn't big on the combat in this one either. Akira is pretty much Esperoba if he had powers. He can use all manner of mind hacking abilities to take enemies down. The issue though is that this man is a thinker pretending to be a fighter.
Yeah, sure, not worth it, mate.
He gets wrecked very easily, the actual abilities have massive wind-up periods and are easily interruptible, and that doesn't help when enemy placements feel quite cheap. And all of this together would have put the near future at the bottom, but it pips its contemporary because of one thing: the final moments. I am a sucker for mech combat, and yeah, it's piss easy, but I don't care. It's really cool to beat down a 100-foot tall titan and pretty much be invincible while doing it, and that opening sequence in reference to the Steel Titan is cheese at its finest. On to number 7 now is the present day. Now I want to say that every era from this point onwards are ones that I enjoyed. I look back on them fondly even if they had flaws, and that mindset begins with Masaru in his journey to be the world's strongest fighter. The present day chapter is interesting in that there's no exploration, it's actually just combat. Instead, it's laid out like the early Street Fighter or Soul Calibur titles in that you pick an opponent to do battle with from a selection screen. Masaru takes on masters of different martial art styles and gradually improves as he learns their abilities during combat. This leads to arguably the most tangible progression in game. The first fight will likely be the hardest you do as you have very little skills available to you at first, but as you push on and learn more abilities, the fights get progressively easier, which from an immersion standpoint makes sense. As you learn more, you get stronger and can find abilities that are more effective against each fighter. It does make the final boss quite easy as a result, but I still like the angle here, and it's one of the shortest chapters of the bunch, so you can easily get this done in say an hour or two. It's a nice change of pace and well worth the playthrough, plus it has the best battle music of the lot. Banger. At number 6 is the final chapter of the entire game, the Dominion of Hate. This is the one that unlocks after you complete all 8 previous segments and is effectively an Avengers Assemble design. All protags come together for one final bout. I think the biggest disappointment that I had with the Dominion of Hate is that I expected more. I wanted more dialogue between the members, better utilisation of their unique abilities to progress. I think I just got it in my head that the final chapter would trump them all, and it just didn't. It's good, just not as good as I expected. What I will say about this chapter though is that it places heavy importance on the player. It offers a huge amount of choice to make that final battle easier, finding all of the protagonists throughout the land, obtaining their ultimate weapons, optional bosses, and indeed multiple endings. What's really cool about this though is that you can choose to play as the antagonist too, and it changes the angle of the story completely. Now I didn't do this, I was happy to just play through to the true ending, which was a nice roundup for our heroes, and to be honest, when I finish a game I like to have that warm fuzzy feeling rather than worldly genocide, but I dare say there are others who think differently to me on that front. Breaking into the top 5 is the twilight of Edo Japan. Now straight up, aesthetically speaking, this is the best looking era of the game. The moonlit castle of the Lord gleaming in the backdrop of night, it looks amazing, and this castle becomes the setting for a mission of paramount importance as you take on the role of Shinobi or Boromaru. And they really took the castle setting to heart. It's got all manner of traps, demons and puzzles, which is cool at first but becomes a real pain if you're not keeping track of where you are. There was one particular trigger that I was struggling to find late on in the segment, and that was purely because I came through a hidden door the wrong way round. I had to approach it from the other side to set off the event. This chapter though adds a really cool mechanic as player choice comes to the forefront once again. You can either kill everything in sight, or you can instead utilise stealth and refrain from slaughter outside of the final moments. Now, I hate people, so I killed everyone, but I like that the choice is there. But what I appreciated the most here was the story, because it's actually rooted in Japanese history. It's set right near the end of the Edo period, also known as the Tokugawa period, which was the point at which Japan locked itself off from the outside world for over 2 centuries. Your mission is to rescue an actual influential figure who was instrumental in opening up Japan to the rest of the world, eventually bringing about the Meiji Restoration. I do have an interest in Japanese history to a point, and it was very rewarding to see how this chapter eventually panned out. At number 4 is Imperial China, where you take the role of Shifu. Yeah, that's his name. The whole point of this chapter is that you're finding 3 disciples who will inherit the Earthen Heart's martial art, and that immediately was a plus for me. In many of the chapters, you're a greenhorn, a rookie, you're the one who's learning from a mentor or who happens to be the underdog. In this one though, the role reverses, as the Shifu pretty much beasts everything that comes at you. So really, Imperial China is not about the challenge, it's more like a raising simulator than anything else as you train up your disciples. However, who you train up will be instrumental in how the remaining half of the segment plays out. A rival dojo will kill off your 2 weaker apprentices, leaving you with one who will eventually succeed you as master of the Earthen Heart. There's some pretty good character development as a result of this, well, as much as Live Alive allows at least of its short runtime, and there's a good balance of exploration and combat too. Into the top 3 now, and the coveted bronze medal is taken by the Wild West. This segment is clearly harkening to the old western movies from the 40s onwards. You can clearly see influence from the likes of The Good, the Bad and the Ugly, the Outlaw, Josie Wales, and of course the Sundown Kid. I mean, the protagonist is literally called Sundown. You have the obligatory duel among the tumbleweed, the silent town, the bandit invasion, and a tavern scene to boot. It's thematic, I love it. But it also stands apart very well from the other chapters. In this era, you have a limited amount of time until some bandits arrive to ransack the town. So your job is to explore said area and find anything useful to make the upcoming fights easier. I normally don't like time limits in games, but this works well because the area is small enough that you can freely look around with a degree of liberty while also giving plenty of time to lay out the traps. The final bout doesn't disappoint either, giving you a visual representation of how well your preparations worked, and then you have the final boss itself along with a duel against your rival who you can choose to spare. The music is great, the atmosphere is on point, and the gunslinger-centric combat is solid. Great chapter. At number 2, and this naturally spoils the top spot, is the Middle Ages. The Middle Ages is the chapter that unlocks after you complete the 7 initial segments, and is the penultimate chapter for the game. Again, like the Wild West, it harkens back to the big names within the genre. There's a clear Dragon Quest and early Final Fantasy influence to it, from the mostly mute chosen hero, to the defined roles of characters and overthrowing the Dark Lord. It's all there. And that's what I thought it would be, just a run-of-the-mill part of the game where you would rescue the princess and live happily ever after. As a result, I was struggling to see at first why this chapter was locked off from the rest. Sure enough though, it throws a curveball and gets intense pretty quickly. This is actually my favourite story in the entirety of the game because it's got solid fundamentals that hold it up. It's paced pretty well, there's a clear message and an impactful climax. The protagonist, in this case Orsted, is the model hero archetype. He does everything right and gets his seeming reward. But through this short journey he witnesses the treatment of older heroes, the fallibility of humanity through fear. He's exiled from the land and branded as a traitor for simply doing what he was told to do. His seeming best friend betrays him out of jealousy, and his betrothed gets a severe case of Stockholm syndrome as she's spreading her cheeks for the bloke who tried to kill him. Hey man, I'd be annoyed too. And Orsted ultimately just goes, well, if everyone else is an arsehole, I'll be the biggest arsehole around. Sure, he redeems himself in the final bout if you get the true ending, which is good to see, but I really dig this development and it gives you chills as the credits roll for the chapter. And at number 1 is a segment that I think some people may find surprising, but I can't help what I enjoy, and that is the distant future. In this era, we take the role of Robo Kirby, also known as Cube. He is an android created by a good-natured inventor to be a sort of assistant to the crew, a crew that is by all accounts not the most friendly with each other. This is once again another chapter where there's very little combat, instead it basically switches genres from JRPG to mild survival horror. The whole chapter is based around solving a mystery as members of the crew are gradually killed off, leading to paranoia among the surviving members, which inevitably feeds in more to the ensuing insanity. The setting is a cargo ship hauling an exotic creature back to Earth, and I think this setting in of itself really drives home the excellent atmosphere that this chapter has. There's virtually no music as you explore the ship, and even if it's a bit jarring at first, you realise why it has been removed as you progress further in the story. When the creature escapes its cage, you can hear the footsteps as it slowly prowls the ship looking for its next victim. Sure, it's not that scary, but it puts you on edge. Plus, the idea of being on a ship helps in the ambience too. If I had to choose between a psychiatric ward gone bad or a ship in space for a survival horror, I'd always pick the latter. At least in a ward, if you escape, you're pretty much home free. In space, there's nowhere to go, your only option is to fight back, and it's why I feel games like Dead Space and Alien Isolation are some of the best titles of the genre. Sure, this chapter doesn't reach those same heights, but I really appreciate the change in tone from the other eras, it works well. Plus, I think this era does really well in its build up to the final boss. Eventually you'll find out the main culprit, and as you're looking for that means of retaliating, you realise that you've been visiting a certain spot in the ship more often than not, and it's the only room that has music. It's clear that the developers were trying to steer you towards this room, subtly but just enough to bring it to the forefront of your mind in those last moments. I love this part. Sure, it lacked in combat, but everything else was top tier and easily put it at the top of my personal list. And there it is guys, my list of the various eras for Live Alive ranked. Share yours in the comments and give us a like for more JRPG related content, and I'll see you soon. Peace.